A young man walks onto a stage. His name, Barack Obama. In 2004, few Americans knew who he was. 17 minutes later, everything changed. What did he say that captured a nation? And how did one speech ignite a path to the White House? The year was 2004. America was weary. War in Iraq, fear after 9/11, and sharp political divisions. Red states, blue states, trust was shattered. Unity felt like a myth. The nation needed more than policy. It needed a reason to believe again. When the Democratic Party chose Barack Obama to give the keynote speech, people asked, "Who is he?" He wasn't famous. Not yet. But behind the scenes, strategists saw potential, a story, a voice, and something far rarer in politics: sincerity. Obama began not with bravado, but humility. "My presence here tonight is pretty unlikely." His father was from a Kenyan village, his mother from Kansas. Their improbable love story unfolded in a country that made it possible. This wasn't just biography, it was allegory. He told his story, but not just for himself. He transformed his roots into a symbol. His family's journey echoed millions of others: immigrants, veterans, workers. He became a vessel for the American dream, showing us that identity and belonging aren't opposites. They're intertwined. "There is not a liberal America and a conservative America," he declared. "There is the United States of America." It was the line that woke the room, a powerful contrast, simple but unforgettable. Obama spoke like a bridge between races, classes, and ideologies. "If there's a child on the south side of Chicago who can't read, that matters to me, even if it's not my child." It wasn't policy, it was principle. Obama was redefining leadership, not as control, but as compassion. Obama didn't just deliver words, he performed them. His voice swelled, his hands cut through the air, his pacing built rhythm. This wasn't political theater. It was a man speaking like it might be his only chance to be heard. Then came the climax. Hope in the face of uncertainty, the audacity of hope. He spoke of slaves singing freedom songs, immigrants crossing oceans, and a skinny kid with a funny name. Hope wasn't a slogan, it was survival, and he made it contagious. When the speech ended, the room erupted. Commentators called it the best speech of the convention. The world asked, "Who is Barack Obama?" But for millions watching that night, the better question was, is this the future of America? Within hours, Obama's name trended across newspapers and television. He wasn't just a keynote speaker, he was a phenomenon. Journalists compared him to JFK. Voters Googled him. Strategists whispered, "This man could be president someday." A spark had caught flame. After the convention, Obama's Senate campaign soared. Donations flooded in. Crowds doubled. He won the Illinois Senate seat in a landslide. But it wasn't just a political win. It was cultural. For many, he represented something rare in American politics: hope without cynicism. Historians would later study that speech like a text, its rhythm, structure, and tone. Short sentences, big ideas, contrasts that cut like truth. Obama didn't just speak, he invited people to dream again and believe that America could still write new chapters. The 2004 keynote wasn't just a political launchpad. It became a touchstone for a generation raised on fear and division. Teachers played it in classrooms. Activists quoted it in marches. It became more than a speech. It was a mirror of who we wanted to be. Obama posed a simple question. Do we accept a politics of cynicism, or dare to believe in a politics of hope? In that choice lies the soul of every democracy. And that night, millions silently answered, "We choose hope." 4 years later, that audacity became reality. Obama returned, not as a guest speaker, but as the Democratic nominee. The skinny kid with a funny name had become the face of America's new story. One that began with just 17 minutes of truth. Critics saw race. Strategists saw charisma. But the speech transcended both. It wasn't just about being black. It was about being American and refusing to be boxed in. Obama didn't promise to heal all wounds, but he showed that leadership could start with empathy. Obama was not a messiah. He was a voice of possibility, not perfection. The 2004 speech never claimed he could fix it all, but it reminded us. Sometimes it's enough to be reminded of who we are and who we still might become. Even today, fragments of that speech echo in politics, classrooms, protests. We are one people. We are our brother's keeper. Words spoken in a single night still ripple through the conscience of a country constantly searching for itself. That night wasn't about Barack Obama alone. It was about stories, how we tell them, who gets to speak, and why it matters. So now the question turns to you. What story will you tell? And will it make someone believe again? Obama's speech was never just about himself. It was a message bigger than one man. He reminded Americans that change isn't delivered, it's made. Line by line, he built a vision where every citizen had a role. The real power? It was always in the people listening. Why did the speech land so deeply? Because it didn't demand belief. It invited it. It wasn't thunder. It was a seed. Obama didn't force conviction. He whispered, "What if?" And that whisper grew into a movement. Many speeches vanish with the applause, but some remain. Obama's words didn't fade. They became rallying cries, class discussions, song lyrics, and tattoos. Because when truth meets poetry, it carves itself into memory. America in 2004 was fearful. The scars of 9/11, economic uncertainty, cultural division. It was easier to stay angry. But Obama offered something harder: vulnerability, grace, and vision. In a world of shouting, he chose stillness. And in stillness, we listened. Obama reminded us that public speaking was once an art. Not just policy, but poetry. Rhetoric wasn't manipulation. It was music. His cadence, his repetition, his timing, they weren't accidental. They were masterful. He made words sing again. Behind the eloquence was pain. Generations of exclusion, silence, and doubt. Obama's story was not polished perfection. It was forged in contradiction. The speech wasn't just about progress. It was about scars carried with dignity. Words opened the door. But after 2004, Obama had to walk through it. He didn't just inspire. He acted. From senator to president, the speech was no longer a promise. It became a standard he had to live up to every single day. Of course, not all were convinced. Some called it naive. Others called it scripted. But history doesn't belong to cynics. It belongs to those bold enough to imagine something better, even when others scoff. Hope, after all, is never unanimous. Every few decades, a voice rises that speaks beyond its time. For many young Americans, Obama's speech wasn't about politics. It was about belonging, about daring to believe that their voice, too, could matter. That words still had power. The applause fades, the headlines change. But some moments, like that July night in 2004, stay because they remind us history isn't made by giants. It's made by voices, clear, steady, and brave enough to speak when it matters most. Today, America faces new divides: digital, cultural, economic. The speech echoes louder now, not softer. We worship an awesome God in the blue states. Obama reminded us that humanity doesn't fit into a binary, not then, not now. Obama's speech didn't wait for the room to be ready. He made it ready. True leadership begins not when everyone agrees, but when someone dares to go first, to say, "I believe in us," even when it's hard. Belief always has a cost. Obama knew his optimism would be mocked, but he chose it anyway, not because it was safe, but because it was necessary. In an era of sarcasm, sincerity became rebellion. Some nights pass unnoticed. Others shape a generation. July 27th, 2004 was one of the latter. For those watching, it wasn't just a speech. It was a signal. That history was not behind us. It was still being written. Obama wasn't just speaking for Barack Obama. He spoke for the children told they didn't belong, for the quiet ones who dream big, for those whose names are mispronounced, whose roots are questioned. He spoke for the forgotten, and they heard him. But a speech is just air, unless it's lived. After 2004, the test began. Could Obama live up to the message? Could any of us? That's the burden of inspiration. It dares others to rise with you. Years later, the phrase still lingers: the audacity of hope. It was more than a book title. It was a worldview. A belief that in the face of fear, division, and doubt, we still reach forward. Not because it's easy, because it's right. Obama passed the torch. And now, it's in our hands. The next voice, the next speech, the next night that changes everything. His legacy was never about him. It was about what we do after the applause stopped. What if we all had a voice like that? What if we believed enough to speak when silence feels easier? Obama reminded us that you don't need a perfect past or a famous name. You just need truth and the courage to say it out loud. 17 minutes. That's all it took to show us the power of voice, of grace under pressure, of hope held high, not as a slogan, but a seed. And tonight, as we look back, we don't just remember the speech. We remember what it awakened in us. The speech wasn't policy. It was poetry, not because it rhymed, but because it resonated. It reminded us that the best leaders aren't just strategists. They're storytellers. And the most enduring revolutions don't start with commands. They begin with words. In a fast-moving world, the 2004 speech made America pause. For once, we weren't arguing. We were listening. And in that quiet, something ancient stirred. That maybe, just maybe, we're still one people, if we choose to be. Obama's words reflected more than a man. They mirrored a nation, its contradictions, its pain, its promise. We saw ourselves in his journey, and for a moment, we weren't fractured. We were one reflection, trembling but intact. There were people that night who weren't in the room, teenagers watching from basements, teachers who pressed record, dreamers across the world hearing something unfamiliar in American politics: honesty. They weren't voters, but they were believers. After the applause died, the lights dimmed, and the room emptied, something remained. A quiet conviction that words still matter, that truth still stirs, and that history, when it speaks, often whispers before it roars. Nearly 2 decades have passed, leaders have come and gone. But the 2004 speech hasn't aged. It still calls to us. Not because it solved everything, but because it dared to imagine we might. That courage is timeless. The stage is empty now. The microphone is waiting. The question isn't what Obama said. The question is, what will you say? Who among us will carry the story forward with new words, new truths, and the same audacity? Back then, Barack Obama was just a name. Hard to spell, easy to mock, but he filled it with meaning, not by changing who he was, but by standing in it fully. That's what legacy is, when a name becomes a symbol. Obama didn't give us hope. He reminded us it was already there. Buried, maybe. Bruised, certainly, but alive. He didn't hand us a map. He handed us a match and trusted us to strike it. This is not the end. It never was. It's a return to belief, to courage, to voice. 17 minutes, a single speech, one unknown man, and now you. This is where we begin again. Not with certainty, but with hope.